The evolution of women in literature. The two poets I will be focused on are Sappho and her poem The Hymn of Aphrodite, and Maya Angelou and her poem Equality. Sappho is an archaic Greek poet. There is not much known about the life of Sappho. However, the current information shows that Sappho grew up on the island of Lesbos. During her time as an adult, she ran an academy for unmarried young women in the city of Mytilene in Lesbos. Also, her poems and writings have induced speculations of Sappho's love life, what today would be called homosexual. Nevertheless, Sappho became a very influential poet of her time. Another poet who shaped the world like Sappho is Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou is an American poet born in 1928. She grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Maya Angelou grew up in a time where she faced racial discrimination. She went through a traumatic experience in Arkansas, where she later moved, that caused her to stop talking for 5 years. Even with all of these tough experiences, Maya Angelou became a very famous and influential poet. Both Maya Angelou and Sappho lived a life in which they had to deal with something about themselves that was different from others. Sappho was homosexual and Maya Angelou was African American. Although they are similar in this way, they both grew up in significantly different time periods, which means they lived different lifestyles. The life the authors lived impact what they wrote about and the way they wrote it. These differences in lifestyles is what helped push the change and development of literature as the way of life evolved. One example of a poem by Sappho that was very influential is the Hymn of Aphrodite. This poem focuses on the themes of love and marriage. In this poem, Sappho fell in love with a man and she begs Aphrodite to bring her beauty so the man can come back to her. It is formatted as a prayer to Aphrodite. Maya Angelou has a poem that is similar and different to the Hymn of Aphrodite. This poem is entitled Equality. This poem is about how colored women are seen and treated in the eyes of men. It focuses on the themes of gender and racial inequality. Both poems are similar because in the Hymn of Aphrodite, Sappho writes about her journey to reach her goal of reaching her man. In Equality, Maya Angelou talks about how she wants to reach her goal against racial discrimination. Despite the similarity, there are differences, such as their writing styles. In general, Sappho uses more of a first-person narration in her literature. Maya Angelou, on the other hand, uses more of a conversational voice. These differences sprout from the ever-changing nature of literature. As time passes and the world changes, literature progresses and adapts. When it comes to literature, the theme of the writing has a big impact on what the poem is conveying. The themes that poets have been writing about evolve as a response to the change in human needs and ways of life. Sappho's main themes in her poems is love and emotion. Her writings dove deep into emotion and experiences. Writing with these themes defined who she was because during her time period, most poetry was written in a different style. She also introduces writing with a distinguishable meter, which is now known today as the Sapphic meter. Maya Angelou wrote about discrimination and struggle. She really dove deep into many controversial topics. She's also a civil rights activist, which had an impact on the themes conveyed in her writing. Her poems are now referred to as the anthem of African Americans. Looking at the themes, they both wrote about topics unheard of during their time. While this is true, there are still some differences seen in their themes. Maya Angelou is different from Sappho because she wrote about issues going on during her time period, while Sappho introduced new themes that are not seen during her time period. Over time, writing has changed. They both wrote about unique topics during their time, but writing has evolved and it is still evolving. Both of these poets impacted literature with their themes in different ways. By doing this, they set up a path for incoming poets to take and shape into their own. Sappho and Maya Angelou each had their unique themes relevant to their time. Sappho's writings and themes represent the writing style of her time around the birth of poetry. Many years pass before Maya Angelou begins writing. Maya Angelou writes in a new style different from Sappho. This happened because throughout the time in between Sappho's last poem and Maya Angelou's first poem, literature has evolved. Women like Emily Dickinson and Sarojini Naidu, who are very influential poets, help transform literature and keep it moving forward. To this day, there are many poets doing their part to help change poetry and shape literature for the future. Overall, both Maya Angelou and Sappho made their mark on literature and helped push forward new women poets to help shape the future of women in literature.